Welcome back. Next up, we have two utilities I'm combining. They're super quick, very easy to pick up. They have to do with borders and shadows. So over here in the docs, if you go to utilities again, borders is up first. It's the very first thing there, and then shadows will come to in a moment. So borders just allow us to easily apply a border to an element. And you can just give something a class of border, and it gives it a default border all the way around. Or you can only do it to the top, the right, the bottom, or the left. And let me just show you what that looks like here. So I have a starter file. It's a little bit different. What I've done, we need something to give a border to. And I didn't want to worry about images. I guess we could have done an H1 or something. I just decided to work with spans. And for each span, I give it a width and a height and set display to inline block. To do that, or why I did that, I'll show you in just a moment. But let's make a couple spans here. And I'll give them all a class of border for now, and I'm going to make 4 of them. Okay, and if I look at them, this is what we end up with: 4 spans that all have a border all the way around, depending on the size of the screen. There's no padding or anything. I just give them a width and a height, and then I did display inline block. If I didn't do that, this is what we end up with. And if I set it to block, they're all like that. So inline block just allows them to sort of flow like this. And you can give them all a class of border. Or let's say this second one, I only want border bottom. And it's hard to tell, I recognize, but it only has a border on the bottom. Or I could do the same thing on the right for this one, and it only gives it a border right. Or, you could do border right, border left, and we get left and right. So that's one option. The other thing we can do is actually go back to borders, we can subtract things. So if you give something a class of border 0, it removes the border entirely. But if you set border top to 0, if it had a border all the way around, you've now set the top part to 0. So I'll just show you that here. Let's duplicate this one and set border all the way around, and then border, let's do right 0. And what you'll see is we end up with a border all the way around, except the right side, there is no border. And of course, we can change the colors using what we've already, the colors that we already know, the names. So let's change some of these. Let's just do a couple more, I guess, down here. So we'll do a border dash danger. And there we go. And so you do have to do both of them, just like you do with buttons, BTN dash danger. Same thing here. Let's do border dash success. And let's also remove it from the top, border top 0. So now we get success all the way around except the top. All right, so that's almost it to borders. Of course, there's all the other colors, but I won't make you watch me do all of them. But we also have border radius. So we can set rounded, which gives sort of a rounded corner all the way around. We can only do rounded on the top, the right, the bottom. You can also do rounded circle, which sometimes I end up using to make circles. Just to show you some of those, let's do a couple more. Let's do a span with the class of border info, and let's make it rounded. Save. Oh, and you know what? It's not border rounded. It is just rounded. There we go. You can see that slight change. So before and after. Okay, so that gives us rounded edges all the way around. We could change it to just be rounded on top. And the bottom, as you can see, are sharp corners, and we get rounded. I don't do that very often. I would just round the whole thing. And then let's do one more with border set to success. Or no, let's do primary. And let's make it rounded circle. And that gives us a circle border. Okay, so this is not looking very pretty, but these are the different border properties. Again, we'll be working on making things that look functional and nice in just a bit, but this is just to showcase things. Next, let's move on to shadows very quickly. So with shadows, there's only one thing we can really do. We can have no shadow, we can have a small shadow, a regular shadow, and a large shadow. So for this, let's do some H1s, or let's do H3s. And I'm going to give them, let's do 3 of them for now. And this first one I'll say is small shadow. This next one is regular shadow. And this final one is large shadow. And then I just need to give them a class. So this first one is class shadow-small. And you can see we get this small shadow. It's not particularly beautiful on an H1 that goes all the way across like that, or an H3, but it works. Then we've got class equals shadow small, and to give it a regular size shadow, it's just shadow. So we'll do that. And then finally, we'll do class equals shadow large. So these aren't breakpoints, small and large. It's just like with buttons, we had a small and a large button. So you can see they're showing up here. Okay, so that's pretty much it for borders and shadows, and we can combine them. I guess I should show that too. Let's do that at the very top. Let's do an H1. Let's make it text center. Let's give it a border of, let's see, what color should it be? Border info. And let's give it rounded corners. And let's give it a shadow small. Oh, and some text, of course. Borders and shadows. There we go. It's kind of hard to see the shadow, so let's give it just regular shadow. There we go. It's not the prettiest thing ever, but we've got our border rounded all the way around, and we've got a shadow underneath. And that's it for borders and shadows. So we saw, adding a border to the whole thing, a certain part, the bottom, the right side, the left and right. We saw how to remove the border from a certain area using border top 0. We saw the different colors, rounding, full rounded, using circle, and then 3 different levels of shadow. And of course, then no shadow. I didn't include that because that's the default. Okay, moving on.